Welcome to MDBytes. This video is going to be the demonstration of Countif, SUMIF and Averageif functions. So here these are the three functions which we are going to use, which is also known as power functions, helps us to tabulate a data rather using pivot table. So Countif, SUMIF and Averageif, all these three are single criterion functions, rather Countifs, sumifs and Averageifs are multiple criterion functions. So the first one, Countif, provides us the count of a range based on one single criteria. So we pass one single condition in this function and find the count of a range, whereas in Countifs we can pass multiple conditions, so we call it as multiple criterions. SUMIF, again, it provides a sum of a range based on one single criteria, and SUMIFs provides the same but with multiple conditions, whereas Averageif is much similar with SUMIF functions, which provides the average of a range based on our single or multiple criteria. So these are the three functions which we are going to apply on the cells to tabulate these data from column A to column E, and we need to find out how many rows of cells we have. So to know that, so we have a shortcut. Place your mouse pointer or the cursor on the lower line of a cell and make a double click, which will take you to the last row of the data. So here we have 742. To go back to the first row, place your cursor on the upper line and make a double click. So these many rows and columns we have, and we are going to apply and find out the data in here using single criterion functions based on the conditions provided in here, and also we will be finding out for multiple criterion functions based on the conditions listed in here, and as well we'll be adding some other additional conditions where, and before applying these functions, let's have a data view on the records what we have. In column A we have employee name, and these are the employees names in the organization. In column B we have departments, and these are the departments where they work for. And in column C we have their status, either they are full-time, half-time or contract people, on which we are going to apply the conditions. And in column D we have the years of experience, and in column B we have provided with the salaries of each employee. Now let us start with Countif function and find total number of full-timers working in the organization. So to find that, we just go with equals and type COUN, and you can find out the Countif function in the list, and select the Countif function, open the parenthesis, and now we need to give the arguments. So the first argument is range and the second is criteria, and range is where we need to find out the criteria and make the count. So for range we are going to pass the full-time value as the criteria, where we can pass it only in column C. So we have the status in column C, so we select column C as our range, and we go for second argument by giving a comma. The criteria is full-time, which is in cell G7, and this is our criteria. So now it goes to column C and finds out the total number of full-timers working in the organization. So now I close the parenthesis, enter. So 393. So these are the numbers of full-time working people in the organization. Now to find out the rest, make a double click on the cell in here and finds the list of half-timers, contract and hourly working in the organization. Now let us see the example for Countifs function. So here we are going to set up multiple criteria to make the counting on a specific range of cells. So we go with equals and just type count. You can find out the function name Countifs in the list and select the Countifs function, open the parenthesis. Now we need to give the arguments, where the first argument is to be criteria range 1, which we will follow the same as we did for Countif. So we select column C as our criteria range 1 and give comma to set up the criteria 1. So the criteria 1 is again the full time, so we're going to count, the first condition is going to count the full timers in the criteria 1. Now the criteria range 2, so we need to set up the second condition. For that we just go with column D, and we need to find out the full timers who work with either greater than or equal to 16 years of experience. So here column D is our criteria range 2, and the criteria 2 will be greater than or equal to 16. So it finds the people who work full time with 16 or greater than years of experience. So now I close the parenthesis and just I enter Answer is 141. So these are the number of full-timers working with minimum 16 years of experience in the organization. So now we do copy formula for the other cells. So we get the values who work with minimum 16 years of experience in other categories of employees. So now we have done Countif and Countifs. So now we move on to SUMIF function, where we are going to calculate the total number of salary paid to full-timers in the organization. For that, we just enter equals, and by just typing sum, we will get the SUMIF function in the list. Select the SUMIF function, and now we need to set up the arguments. So we have three arguments: range, criteria, sum range. So the range is similar where we used for count and countifs, and criteria is also the similar one, and now the additional is sum range, where we need to select one more range for summing up the values. So here we just give column C as the range, where we need to search for the criteria of full-time employees. So now we have set it up the range and criteria. Now we go for sum range, where we need the total amount of salaries paid to the full-timers in the organization. So now we just select column E as the sum range, and we just go with this formula to find out the total amount of salary paid to the full-timers. So with this formula we just enter. So this is the total amount of salary paid for full-timers. Now we do the copy formula to find the amount of salary paid to the other categories of employees. So now we go for multiple criteria SUMIFS function. So here we are going to pass the same condition, but with another additional condition for finding out minimum 16 years of experience people. So here we just go with equals and type SUMIFS and select the function. Now we go for the arguments. Now we can find the first argument is sum range. So there is a slight difference with SUMIF and SUMIFs, where in SUMIF, sum range was the last argument. Here it is the first argument to be mentioned. So we go with column E as the sum range, and we go with criteria range 1, column C, and we go for criteria 1, which should be the full-timers, where we have in cell G7, and we go for the second set of criteria. So the criteria range 2, we go with column D, where we are going to select people who have minimum of 16 years of experience. So we select column D as criteria range, and comma, we go for criteria 2. So here we set the condition greater than or equal to 16, so it will find out the employees who have minimum of 16 years of experience. So now by entering, we will get the total amount of salaries paid to the full-timers who have minimum of 16 years of experience. So here for that, criteria 1 is G7, and criteria range 2 is D, column D, and criteria 2 is greater than or equal to 16. So now we enter. So this is the answer: the total amount of salary paid to the full-timers with minimum 16 years of experience, and I do copy formula, which provides the salaries of other employees who work with minimum 16 years of experience. Now we go for our next example, Averageif, which is much similar with SUMIF function. To find out the average salary paid to the full-timers, we go with the formula equals, type average, select average function if, and open the bracket. The first argument is range, which has to be the similar as SUMIF. So we go with column C, the range has been selected, and the criteria is in cell G7, which is full-time, where we need to calculate the average salary paid to the full-timers in the organization. So the third argument, average range, should be selected for column E, and here we go with this formula to find the average amount of salary paid to the full-timers in the organization. Now we do copy formula to find out the average paid for other categories. So these are the amount of salary averages paid to the other category of employees in the organization. So now we go for Averageifs function with multiple conditions with additional of minimum 16 years of experience employees. So we go with Averageifs and select the average range as the first argument. So the average range is again column E, should be the average range. Just give comma, and we go for the criteria range 1. So our criteria range 1 is similar as SUMIFS function. We go with column C as the criteria range 1, and for criteria 1 we go with cell G7 as the full timers. So now we have set it up the first criteria, and we now go for column D as the criteria range 2, where we are going to set up the minimum of 16 years of experience as the criteria 2. So now this formula will give us the average amount of salary paid to the full timers with minimum 16 years of experience. In addition, we can also add more criteria ranges and criteria in the multiple criterion functions. So here we go with this formula and enter. So this gives the answer for the first condition. Now we do copy formula and provides the answer for other categories of employees, averages, who have their experience with minimum of 16 years. So now we have done the functions of Countif, SUMIF and average for single criteria, and Countifs, SUMIFs and average for multiple criteria with an additional condition of years greater than or equal to 16. So we did for multiple criteria as per the categories of employee and as well as the years of experience. So this is how we apply Countif, SUMIF, Averageif and Countifs, SUMIFs and Averageifs.